Hello, welcome to another episode of This, That, and the Other. And lately, ideas are coming up for various shows to do. And another idea just came up the other day. I saw the information on this, and it's about the first woman to fly solo around the world. Her groundbreaking 22,860 flight took place in 1964. This barely 5-foot tall pilot set 21 world records. And she said there were women who told me that they flew because of me. I'm glad I did what I did because I had a wonderful time. She was born in 1925 and grew up during the Great Depression. When she went to Ohio State University, she became the only woman in her aviation engineering class. First, the other men looked down on her, and they didn't after she was the only one to score 100 on a chemistry test. After that, nobody looked down on her. It was actually a very, very difficult chemistry exam. 1945, she left college to marry Russell Mock. Couples had 3 children, but she was bored. She said, "I'm just a housewife. I'm tired of washing dishes and ironing clothes." She told the Washington Herald in 1964. She found other ways to keep herself occupied. In 1960, she produced the television series Youth Has Its Say, where she helped teenagers parse through current events. She also became a writer and director of opera Preluda, indulging her love for music in a weekly radio show that preceded broadcasts from the Metropolitan Opera. She still needed to do something else. So while her sons were at school, she began taking flying lessons, and soon she and her husband both were licensed to fly. They purchased a Cessna 180, naming Spirit of Columbus after their Ohio hometown. Before long, she dubbed the aircraft Charlie, derived from its registration number N1538C, 38 Charlie, and the aviation alphabet code word for C. One evening at dinner, she told her husband that she thought her life would be more exciting, or thought about how. One evening after dinner, while talking to her husband about how she thought her life would be more exciting, her husband replied, "Why don't you just get on a plane and fly around the world?" "All right," she said. I will, she said. Idea was a joke, but 2 years later, she was obtaining permissions and visas, charting flight paths, and working through a long checklist in preparation, including clearing foreign sanctions and getting permission from the National Aeronautic Association in order to be considered the official record bearer for circumventing the globe. She secured a $10,000 loan from the Columbus Dispatch to finance the trip. That would be equal to about $95,000 a day. In addition, Dispatch required articles from her, including exclusion interviews about her flight. She was considerably less experienced than other pilots, having logged just 750 hours of flying time with only 250 hours of solo flight. She had never flown any further than the Bahamas, much less endured a 14-hour-long flights that she would need to do for some of the more tedious legs of her journey. While her plane was capable of handling a trip around the globe, it needed modifications. She added 3 extra fuel tanks, dual directional finders, short-range radios, and a long-range high-frequency radio, which barely left her any space in the cockpit. She packed a typewriter, 2 outfits, 2 pairs of shoes, forsaking her much-loved slacks for the sake of diplomacy. During her landings abroad, she wore a blue drip-dry combo sweater and skirt. Less than 3 months before departure, she discovered that another woman, Joan Merriman Smith, was planning to take the record. Smith was a better pilot than Mock, and she was well known in aviation circles. Even if Smith was not officially sanctioned by the NAA, she beat Mock in coming back to the U.S. The public would acknowledge Smith as the first woman to fly around the world. She said, I hadn't counted on a race when all this started. She wrote in 1970 memoir, 38 Charlie, first woman to fly solo around the world. Press jumped on the story, turning into competition. Mach's husband stepped up to the pressure, reminding Mach that they were too deep with their sponsors. Worried that the dispatch would pull its funds, she decided to leave 2 weeks earlier than planned, 2 days after Smith. She hoped to spend a day at each place she landed, taking in the sights, but in order to circumvent the globe and return home before Smith. Her husband urged her to get off the plane, sleep 5 required hours needed in order to fly again, and depart without seeing the city. As she prepped for a flight at the Columbus airport, she was uncomfortable with all attention around her. But this was her chance to finally achieve dreams and see the world, perhaps ride a camel, maybe an elephant. As her little Cessna took flight, she heard the tower controller remark, "I guess that's the last we'll hear from her." The comment would only solidify her resolve. Throughout the journey, her husband and the dispatch pushed her to win the race. Russell Mach even misled his wife about Smith's whereabouts. Smith, in fact, had fallen behind Mach in a race, stuck in South America. In the air of the first leg of the flight, she discovered her long-range radio was inoperable. Later, she'd find the wire had been disconnected and would suspect sabotage. But at that moment, she stared at the blue of the Atlantic Ocean, was at peace. But she said she was the kind of person who could sit in an airplane. She said she was not the type of person who likes to be continually with other people. She preferred solitude and was still honored when the crowds of people swarmed her at each landing. Flying barefoot, she would slip on her heels before stepping out of the plane, ready to look the part of her nickname, the Flying Housewife. Saudi Arabia, where women were not allowed to drive until 2017, male onlookers were confused when she arrived. One stepped forward to peer around the cockpit before shouting in astonishment there was no man there. Mach received a rousing ovation, she wrote in her memoir. The whole flight was not smooth sailing, but she remained cool under the pressure. She was flying over to Santa Maria in the Azores. Ice formed on the wings, a problem that could lead to catastrophe. She flew above the clouds and waited for the sun to thaw the ice. She was also calm when her radio antenna began smoking over the Libyan desert and when sand blew into her engine over Saudi Arabia. She later said she thought it was an advantage that she learned to fly without instruments. She told the Cincinnati Enquirer in 1979, "Many of the countries I flew over had very primitive facilities. If I had not learned to fly without instruments, I would surely have lost." As she prepared to make her way back to Ohio, she was looking forward to visiting Hawaii, her final respite before flying 14 hours over the Pacific Ocean. However, according to her memoir, upon landing, she received a phone call from her husband telling her that a luau and other parties had been arranged for a visit, had been canceled at his urging so that she could sleep instead. "But I'm not tired. Not now that I'm here. How could you ruin things before I even got here?" She was irritated by the interference with the crowd listening. I didn't say much more. It was not the time to get personal. The couple divorced in 1979, though her daughter Valerie and sister Susan said the pair would remain lifelong soulmates. April 17, 1964, she completed her journey. 3 weeks ahead of Smith, she arrived back home at Columbus Airport. With much fanfare, state officials congratulated her on the achievement. Governor declaring Ohio's Golden Eagle and designated the date as Jerry Mach Day. Her husband gave her orchids, but acknowledged she probably needed a double shot of scotch. With no time to rest, she made an appearance on the Today Show and met with President Lyndon B. Johnson, who awarded Mach with the Federal Aviation Agency's Declaration for Exceptional Service, along with a birthday cake for 4-year-old Valerie. Smithsonian asked for Charlie, and the Cessna gave her an upgrade, a new Cessna P206, while the Columbus Dispatch gifted Mach a Golden Globe necklace and lay with rubies for every place she visited, and with a diamond to designate the city of Columbus. But she was tired of being in the public limelight, and according to the Arizona Republic in 1964, something of her thoughts, she wrote in an article for the Washington Record-Herald, "Traveling so far, so fast, I have a whole jumble of impressions that I want to sort out when I have time. The experience has certainly been fulfilling. This is the way I believe life should be lived," she concluded. After her legendary flight, her ruby necklace was stolen. Mock couldn't afford the taxes and upkeep on a new plane, but before she gave up flying, she took one more trip. While searching for a new home for the Cessna P206, she decided to donate the aircraft to the Flying Padres, or the National Association of Priest Pilots working in Papua New Guinea. She would fly the plane to the missionary, Father Tony Gendusa, so that he could use it in the jungles to ferry patients and medical supplies. To make the long-distance flight, she sat on top of a fuel tank padded with 5 gel cushions, which would give her long-term hip damage. Once she handed over the keys, she flew commercial to see her friends around the globe, says Mock Pike, bringing back dozens of gifts and souvenirs. Back home, she became manager of the Highland County Airport. Her days were occupied by grass cutting, gasoline pumping, and other chores at the airport. Although she remained energetic as ever, Cincinnati Enquirer wrote in 1979 her efforts to monetize her record-breaking flights never panned out, and the financial burden of her loan made new ventures impossible. She wanted to open a restaurant called Phoenix International Skyways, featuring the recipes she gathered, like Hungarian chicken paprika and crepes Florentine. She had never had quite a taste for Indian food, according to Mock Pike. Instead, she would assist with local literary efforts in libraries. She was fascinated by watching the world change, says Mock Pike. She never lost her spunky character. She's invited to the National Air and Space Museum, where after Airplane Charlie went on view, the 82-year-old former pilot did not want to fly a commercial airline, so Cochran, because her little town was just too far from the airport, one of the museum's docents was a pilot who decided to get her and bring her to the nation's capital. Upon landing at the small airstrip near the Chesapeake Bay, she set her sights on local fare. She said, "Okay, I'm ready for crab cakes." At the museum, she saw Charlie one last time. She was happy as a clam and talking to people all day, says Cochran. On the 50th anniversary of her flight, she was unable to attend the unveiling of a new statue, but watched the Columbus ceremony online. While she would say she didn't understand all the fuss, her children noticed her wiping her tears. 2017, professional pilot Shasta Weiss, the first certified civilian female pilot from Afghanistan, became the youngest woman to circumnavigate the globe. She credits Jenny Mock for inspiring her career. Mock Pike's one-act play is keeping her grandmother's memory alive. She's putting together a cookbook that Mock never could, as well as recording an audiobook regarding her grandmother's memoir of 3-8 Charlie. She never appreciated the nickname Flying Housewife, as she was no ordinary housewife with a fierce record breaker, but more than that, she was a person with dreams and the temerity to achieve them. She died at her home in Quincy, Florida on September 30th, 2014, with her daughter on her side. Thanks to the help of volunteer pilots, she took her final night flight in the Cessna 180 as her ashes were returned to the clouds. So, very interesting story about the first woman to ever fly around the world, and I very much enjoyed reading about it. And I read bits and pieces off the internet that I found on the internet about this story, and like I said, I'm looking for ideas on shows to do in the future. I do history, preserving history, especially obscure aspects of history. And with that being said, like, subscribe, share. As always, thanks for watching.